What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Overwatch Weekly. Today I have a decent amount of stuff to talk about, as well as a nice, fun, juicy story at the end of this about Overwatch contenders and Toronto Esports. So if you don't want to know about that, I'm putting that at the end. But if you do know anything about it and want to know a little bit more, I will talk about it. I'm going to start with the fact that right now, actually as of starting yesterday, Overwatch is free to play from November 20th through the 26th. In addition to that, we're in Thanksgiving time here in the States. There's also a big Black Friday sale on the Blizzard store. And that includes Overwatch League stuff as well, and non-Overwatch stuff. So if you want to check any of that out, link is in the description to both. The information about the free weekend and the Blizzard store, which is on sale, which is pretty cool, pretty cool. So yeah. But next we have some PTR patch notes. Actually, two different sets of PTR patch notes, and I want to talk about these because they're interesting. We're going to start with the first ones, which are from November 14th. So the first one is just that the option to use Windows Spatial Audio is now available. It was not available on PC before because of, I think, some issue that they had. They had taken it away, so they bumped it up. Next we have on Bastion a couple changes. One, he had his ammo increased while in his recon configuration from 25 to 35, and while in Sentry he had his weapon spread decreased by up to 33% while firing, which is awesome because I love Bastion, and I think Bastion's a really fun hero, but his recon ammo definitely was an issue. You kind of run out really quickly when you had to try to save yourself and flank, and then the weapon spread decrease, I mean, that's fine. You don't really need it. Without quickly he shoots. If someone's close, they're going to die no matter what. But it's meant for the longer ranges, so it makes sense. Next, we have Brigitte, who had a change to her shield bash. She had another change that we'll get to when we get to the next set of PTR patch notes, but her shield bash can no longer travel or stun targets through barriers. Doomfist had the rising uppercut change with a loss of air control duration lowered to 0.6 seconds from 3 seconds. That's a huge drop. And Seismic Slam had its maximum range reduced from 20 meters to 15 meters, which is interesting. I don't know. Some of these changes that they made I don't fully agree with. I understand Doomfist was in a place where he's really strong, but it's like a weird, I don't know, it's really, Doomfist was nothing, and then all of a sudden he became strong with, Brigitte and all this other stuff, and some of these other heroes that are added in. It's all weird. It's all weird. McCree had the Peacekeeper alternate fire damage increased from 45 to 55. So that's just when he's fanned the hammering. With Soldier 76, his tack visor no longer makes helix rockets auto-target enemies. And with Torbjorn, the Molten Core damage is increased from 130 to 160 per second, which is interesting. I didn't know Molten Core was at a point where it was low, but it was. So that's it for the first set, and I want to talk about some of these, but I want to talk about the second set of changes, which came on the 18th. And they, once again, are about Brigitte and about Doomfist. So let's start with the Doomfist ones, because I have a lot more opinions on the Brigitte ones. So with Doomfist, Seismic Slam, the victims no longer lose air control while being pulled in. And with Meteor Strike, the inner ring damage radius increased from 1.5 meters to 2 meters, which is the ring where Meteor Strike deals its full 300 damage. But the max outside damage of the inner ring was decreased from 300 to 200, and it's the ring where damage fall off happens. So it still reduces the damage done to 15 at max range. But the max damage outside was decreased. So the inner ring, you have more room to hit with the inner ring, but on the outside, the max damage is now less, which is interesting. They say that the PTR Doomfist changes are all about trying to give his enemies more opportunities to effectively fight back, and these changes are no exception, which I think I agree that is definitely what they do. The meter strike changes will make it harder to secure a free kill on heroes without mobilities such as Zenyatta or Ana, while still preserving its max potential damage when aimed well, or when combined with other abilities such as Graviton Surge or Sleep Dart. I mean, I get that, and I think Doomfist was in a point where he was a little bit overpowered in a way. I like Doomfist. I didn't start playing Doomfist until recently. Not because he was really good. I just started. I was so bad as him. I didn't understand how he played. But once I kind of figured it out over time, I started liking him. And I get this. I mean, I've never been good at Meteor Strike, so that doesn't really bother me that much. And the Meteor Strike change is fine. It's just a matter of the whole point of Doomfist is that you have to be able to close gaps, because you're not going to deal damage from range. So I don't really have an issue with any of this. It's just I don't fully. I don't know. I haven't seen any pro play recently, with the exception of the World Cup. I haven't watched any kind of pro play recently, so I don't really know what has been going on with some of these heroes. But the Brigitte changes, which is where I have a little bit of issue with these. So first, her shield bash damage was reduced from 50 to 5, and her inspire passive, so when her healing when she does damage, the cooldown is reduced from 1.5 seconds to 1 second. The duration was increased from 5 seconds to 6 seconds, and the total healing was increased from 80 to 100. So essentially, all this means is she can do more healing now to her allies who are close to her, which is good. I think that was one of the issues with Brigitte, was that she had become so she was not reliable with healing, that it was more useful to just run in with her, because you're not going to heal anyone anyway, so you might as well just run in with her and do damage instead, because she was better at it. And you can stun enemies and hit them with the whip shot, whatever. My issue is with the damage reduction of shield bash from 50 to 5. Look, 50 to 25 is fine to me. 50 to 20, 50 to 15 even. Like 50 to 15 is where I would have been like, that's still harsh, but like, okay. 50 to 20 or 25 I think would have been the better number. But 50 to 5, I think that's too much of a drop. I think that's too much. I'm worried. I know, and I watched the video about that Stylosa did, where he said, I still don't think the Tracer matters to me this big thing. I think the shield is the bigger problem, and all this other, the armor that she gives is the bigger problem. And I get that. And I think she did need a damage reduction on Shield Bash, but Shield Bash is meant to obviously stop heroes like Tracer, and that those really fast heroes that are meant in like the dive comps, and I understand that they're trying to make her less tanky and more healy, because at the end of the day she's a support, and that's really what she should be doing. But my one issue with this whole thing is that I just feel like it's getting to a point where she's just becoming so just everything that is going on in the meta, the blame falls on Brigitte every time. And while in some cases I believe she is in need of changes, and sometimes it's like, yeah, that is something that needs to be changed, sometimes it's just like, well, other heroes are in need of help, and it's not because of necessarily that they're weak, it's just that they don't fit into the meta, and then the result is, well, Brigitte is the problem. Like, I don't know, it's hard. I don't really know how to like explain it the best. I think she needs to be tweaked, obviously, but I think that 50 to 5 is too much. Tracer isn't afraid anymore, which I guess is still good. I mean, you can still get stunned and get hit with the whip shot, and it's still a problem. But as a support player myself, I don't like this much change to the team as a or to the team as a whole, to the to a hero. I just think it isn't really the best thing for the game when there's heroes that are basically like scapegoats for everything, and she obviously has some things that need to be changed, but I don't know. I'm interested to see what this is like when it hits the live servers. I don't play a lot on the PTR, because I like to see kind of where they finalize stuff. But you take that. Obviously, her shield bash doesn't go through barriers, and now it only does 5 damage. I'm fine with the healing buff. I think that's good, because in a way it deters people from trying to play super aggressive. I think it promotes more people being backline healers, saving your team when someone tries to flank your team. A tracer comes to flank your team, and you're like, okay, well, now my team's here, I'm protecting the rest of my backline or whatever. I think that's the goal of what this does. You're not really trying to do as much damage. You're just trying to be like, oh, here's what, just quick like stun save your teammate so that they know what's going on, kind of thing. That's what I think this change kind of helps with, but I don't know. We'll see. But that's it for the PTR patch notes. Let's move on to the next story, which involves another Overwatch League expansion team announcing its branding. This is the team coming out of Hangzhou. You've probably already seen this story because it happened a week ago, and of course I just missed it because it came out after the video went up. But that is the Hangzhou team, and they are the Hangzhou Spark. You should be seeing their fabulous colors on screen right now. What's interesting is that there was a leak that I've talked about in the past of team brands. The Hangzhou Spark one is actually different than the one we saw, in that the logo was blue. There was no lightning bolt behind the spark part. Pink was definitely not a part of it. But Hangzhou is going all in on their color, their branding. I love it. It's different. It's unique. It's nothing like any of the other team colors. It stands out. They did what they ought to do, and that's really what you should be doing, is making colors that stand out. People recognize them instantly. They did a great job. They'll be interesting to watch, because I don't personally like. I'm in a weird boat because I don't really like that color pink, but I respect it. So that's that. But that's every story that I wanted to talk about for the early part of this video. This last story is an interesting one. It's kind of complicated and kind of confusing, and it involves Toronto Esports Club. Now, Toronto Esports Club, for those who don't know, is the contenders team that played for Boston Uprising during seasons 1 and 2 of the 2018 contender season. They have nothing to do with Toronto Defiant in terms of their organization. They have no organizational ties to the Toronto Defiant. They have been very, very strange on the social media recently, whatever. So they challenged the Toronto Defiant to a show match to kind of be like the best team in Toronto, and the Toronto Defiant never responded, because why would you? There's literally no reason to respond, because if you do and you lose, well, then that's embarrassing. If you do and you win, well, you should have won, so that's whatever. If you don't respond, you look like a team that is scared, and if you do respond and decline publicly, you look like a team that is scared. So they can't win in the situation, but the best thing they can do, in my opinion, in most people's opinions, is you just don't respond to it. You ignore it, because it doesn't matter, because this is not an Overwatch League team, and that is not your focus. Your focus is on developing your brand, getting your team ready, getting your team out there, getting your team scrimming, because they have the Overwatch League to prepare for, while you have the Overwatch Contenders to prepare for. And it just became a very, very toxic environment. The owner of Toronto Esports was DMing people on Twitter and saying stuff like, like you're a coward and all this other stuff, because people were not, people didn't like the approach that Toronto Esports Club was taking with social media, and the way that he was kind of DMing people, calling people cowards because they weren't replying to his DMs, and it was a very weird situation. And like I said, there's a video linked in the description that I highly recommend you watch. It's 17 minutes, goes through the whole thing. So there's this organization that is just very weird, and it's very strange the way they're doing things. They were founded in 2016 by a doctor, just a doctor who really just wanted kind of an esports presence in Toronto, and they got a quick connection that ended up getting them linked to Robert Kraft and the Boston Uprising, and now they're just looking like this weird guy. This doctor, I mean, I have to admit, like, this guy, from everything I've seen on his Twitter and from the Toronto Esports Twitter, is toxic. He is horrible representation for what leadership in a professional organization should be. He should not be the leader of any kind of organization at all. I would hate for my doctor to be like a guy who went to medical school. I'm not gonna, there's people, who can say whatever they want. Like, maybe he faked his way through medical school. Whatever. Like, he may have. He probably didn't. It doesn't matter. What does matter is I would not want to hitch myself onto this guy's train, whether it be professionally in terms of the organization with Toronto Esports Club, whether it be as a member of his staff in his practice, whether it be a patient. He's just the guy is just toxic, and he wants all this toxic stuff. And he was just going, we're the best team in Toronto, we're the best team in Toronto. And then he got a notice from the Overwatch League and from Blizzard that the exclusive rights to the name of to having a city in Toronto, or a team in Toronto, was given to the Toronto Defiant, and he would have to change the team name. And he ultimately decided that the option was to just drop out of Overwatch Contenders right then and there, ahead of the season. So the players and the coaches, all that stuff for the team, are still going to play. They're still going to be the Boston Uprising Contenders team. They just won't be under the name Toronto Esports Club. They have not announced a name yet. But the whole situation is really weird. The guy seems very, very just awful. Like, he just seems like a horrible guy. And the whole situation is weird. Like I said, there's a link in the description to a video. I highly recommend you watch it. The guy goes much more into detail about what's going on. He kind of he shows you images and pictures. It's a fantastic video. I'm so glad I stumbled across it on Reddit earlier, because it was really good. But that's the stuff we got going on right now in the Overwatch scene. So it'll be an interesting season for Contenders, Season 3. I'm excited to see exactly what stuff goes on behind the scenes, and see if we find anything out. I'm interested to see what happens with this organization, the Toronto Esports Club, because I would hope that this guy either stops being involved in esports forever, or fixes his act and realizes that he's just not in the right with all this. But yeah, that's really everything I got for you this week. Interesting stuff. But that's what we're rocking with. So if you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing. Helps out a ton with what's going on here. But I'm gonna stop this here. So thank you for watching. I'll see you all in the next video, and I'm out. Have a good Thanksgiving.